Welcome to 1111 downtown Fort Worth. I was talking a minute ago and happened to notice this pure example of deep relaxation. This morning we're going to be talking about a better way to be our post-pandemic selves as that comes around. And so I hope you'll stay with us for the next 35 minutes. Brad Thompson and Hannah Kirby have prepared some amazing music for us. We'll have some other surprises, and then Linda McDermott and I will be in that conversation about just what that post-pandemic self might look like. Sign up there on the side. Let us know that you're with us today, and also who might be with you and how you're doing. We really want to know how things have been going for you. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Great song. Brad, band, you guys are doing a great job. Thank you. Well, love is always the fuel to that better way. Today, I offer this prayer essay about our awakening to love. I begin with a short story from my own life, and then a prayer adapted from the words of James Baldwin. When my son was 2 years old, he was helping me hold his new baby cousin. This went on for a while with my arms enfolding his little boy arms as he held the infant, lovingly, I might add. I decided in a minute it was time to take the baby back and lay her in her infant seat. My 2-year-old boy resisted the tug to release the baby and tugged back, wanting to hold on just a little bit longer. It wasn't the usual 2-year-old defiance and tantrum. It was the boy's experience of the miracle of love for someone that he did not yet understand to be his blood kin, but with whom he felt the longing to connect, that innate longing. His feelings, like sparks that fly from friction, light up and awaken us early on to the wonder of our human connection. And so, Holy One, to feel the love that passes between us and the people we know, family and friends, even people we know less intimately but still say we know. That kind of emotional transaction is one thing. It fuels the fires of our existence, and we are nothing without it. But to feel that love from those we do not know, people unknown to us, people who watch over us when we are sick, people who study and experiment and start again and again to provide cures and conveniences and things that make our lives work. Those unknown people who run into the flames for us, who perform everyday miracles. These are, as one writer has said, everyday Christs. And they bring our emotions to another level, to faith, so that we know there is reason to believe.
Hey, from 1111, we want to give a shout out to Aiden and Christian, Rachel, and to Claire, Piper, and to Thomas. We want to give a shout out to you guys.
Yes, we love you. What an exciting time. Just think when you're old, you can tell stories about back in the day in your senior year when you're stuck at home for a whole semester. We love you guys. We can't wait for things to be somewhat normal so we can see you again. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, seniors. Way to go. We love you guys. God bless. This is Brad from 11 saying we love you guys. Woohoo!
Hey, so listen, guys, so much that we love you guys because you're part of our community, and it's been our honor and privilege just to have you in there and have you involved in our liturgy as well as in our band and in all facets. We just love you guys, and we wish the very best for you, and we hope to see you before you get out to your various adventures beyond, and maybe we can see you in person. Love to you, and best wishes.
Bye.
Bye.
A new day dawns, and I am practicing my purpose once again. It is fresh and it is fruitful if I win, but if I lose, ooh, I don't know. I'll be tired, but I will turn and I will go. Only guessing till I get there, then I'll know. Oh, I will know. All the children walking home past the factories can see the light shining in my window as I write the song to you. And all the cars running fast along the interstate can feel the love that radiates, illuminating what I know is true. All will be well, even after all the promises you've broken to yourself. All will be well. You can ask me how, but only time will tell. The winter's cold, but the snow still lightly settles on the trees. And a mess is still a moment I can seize until I know that all will be well. Even though sometimes this is hard to tell, and the fight is just as frustrating as hell, all will be well. spoken to yourself, all will be well. You can ask me out, but only time will tell. You can ask me out, but only time will tell.
So, week 3, we're still married.
So far, so good.
Did you know it's National Paranormal Day?
No.
And
not on my
we're
calendar.
just paranormal people trying to make this work.
Oh, that is such a bad dad
It is.
joke.
I just wanted to do it. Okay. Hey, everyone.
Hi. Good morning. Welcome to 1111. Reverends Tom and Linda McDermott here. We're in
Week number 6
week
of
number
online
6.
worship. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This wonderful sort of conversation / curious shop of ideas and inspiration and amazing music. And while it's coming up here, you'll see some things pop up on the screen for you to register, sign in your attendance, let us know who's with you.
Who's with you? And
On the-
send us some messages. That's fun.
Oh,
we
my
like
gosh.
getting those. Those
we
are
love
great.
getting that. Thank you so much. I know y'all are sending those, so thank you so much for that.
Also, there's the online
giving, if you want to keep up your pledge there while we're living at distances.
Or if you're just watching us and not a member,
Yeah,
you can also
absolutely.
make donations.
Also
Thank you.
helps our
Appreciate
ministries
that.
here that are continuing to be active in the community and across the country as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about what's next. What's next for us? I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting, and now we're already getting hints at what's next, but we're in the midst of this sort of pandemic, and we have this new series we're calling our Pandemic Post-Pandemic Self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe what it's going to be like when we go back to what we call normal routine life.
Yeah, and that's that's creating a little anxiety for me, because I'm thinking about that's the Ben Harper song, such a wonderful song.
Gosh, they did such a
They
good
did
job.
a great job.
And did
with that.
you see that good-looking hippie guy on the drone?
Did you see the dog come in?
No, I think he's scared.
I was in such a meditative state. I didn't know that he was there. But
that was a great song.
I chose that song for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, because to me, it speaks to where we are even now. It's always speaking to injustice and such, but it really speaks to where we are now. And this sense of, I really want to believe there's a better way, not just a reboot, not just that we go back to the way things were and finally get back out there and we can get back to what we were doing. I think we have an opportunity for this reset to see something, a better way to do life.
Better way, yeah.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I'm really anxious to get back, but in other ways, it feels like it's too soon. I mean, we've had time to think, and I have to admit, I've learned some things. Some things have become more obvious to me. Some really good things, like people being really friendly and kind and generous, and I have seen wonderful acts of kindness. And then some of the things that I think we would rather not see, I'd rather not see, but it really
Like what?
became, like our healthcare system, the inequities of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
how we,
The way this disease has affected
the poor
in
and
inequity in an unequal way. Yeah.
it's so there's some things have come to
Kind
light.
of feels like there's a lot of insight we're starting to gain, but maybe
Yeah.
it's too soon to just rush back out there without these insights. And it reminds me of that Fokker scene, or Meet the Fockers. You remember the movie Meet the Fockers?
Yeah.
And Ben Stiller's Greg Fokker, and this is the second one, and his parents and his in-laws, they've just added a whole movie all the way up 4/5 the way into the movie. There's just this tension. It's egos, it's jealousy. They're fighting. Nobody's getting along, and Greg's in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And they end up in jail. There's that great scene.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, they're in the jail scene. They're all three of them in a jail scene, and then the judge comes in with the guard,
And
and
they're still
says-
arguing.
They're still arguing, and
Yeah.
poor Greg's just like he has no idea of how to
Yeah.
get this thing fixed. And so, the judge comes in with the guard, says, "Cletus, let him out." And the guard comes over there and he starts to open up the deal.
Yeah.
And Greg gets up and he walks right to the bars, and he grabs hold of the bars and he slams the door shut.
Yeah.
Looks at the guard and says, "We're not done yet."
That's a great line.
Right?
That's exactly what this
I mean, that's what I
feels
want to
like.
do. I want to slam the doors on this right now
We're
and
not
say,
done.
have we really thought through what
Yeah.
this is?
Somebody said the other day that it's kind of like Mother Nature is scolding us and saying, you need to take a time out. You need to go to your room.
Oh, that's
Maybe
yeah.
we're not ready to come out yet.
Yeah, the thing about timeouts is that it's not punishment.
in this sense, it's not just Sabbath as a timeout.
Right.
It's
right.
Sabbath as a chance to think,
Yeah,
to
exactly.
reflect on what really could change.
Right.
You know, we're in Easter season, season of change. So this couple of weeks ago, we had the story of Jesus appearing to the disciples in the room. They were hidden just after the empty tomb. And what does he do? He appears and he bestows on them. He breathes the blessing that just simply says shalom, which we remember now means wholeness, balance. That's my wish for the world is shalom, harmony.
Yeah.
And then that comes right before this story that that you're going to share with us and some ideas.
Yeah, the scripture for today is the last chapter of John. It's when the disciples and Peter have gone out fishing during the early morning hours, kind of going back to life as they knew it before they knew Jesus. And a man appears on the beach and calls out to them, and John recognizes him as Jesus. And he says, "It's our Lord." And Peter jumps in the water, swims ashore. They all
Okay,
come
we'll say
ashore.
what happens. Peter's naked and he puts on clothes, and then he jumps in the water.
Yeah,
we don't
I'm
know
not
what
going to
that's
go there,
about.
but what was he doing fishing
It's a whole
naked?
cultural thing, I guess. But
Okay, anyway, well, back to the story. They go to the beach. Jesus has lit a charcoal fire, which is interesting because during the denial in the
Yeah.
courtyard, charcoal fire.
Right.
But he's got a charcoal fire and he cooks them the fish, and it says he offers them bread and fish. Another mirroring of that loaves and fishes story. And then the scene changes, and Jesus and Peter alone, and 3 times Jesus says, "Peter, do you love me?" It's kind of mirroring the
Oh, the
three
three
denials.
times. Yeah, the 3 denials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 3 times Peter says, "Yes, you know that I love you." And every time he says that, Jesus responds with,
Feed my sheep.
yeah,
Which is
as
that
if you love me, you will
take care of others. Compassion.
Yeah, have
Yeah.
compassion.
Like the great
Care.
commandment. And it reminds me of the feeding of the 5,000. That same kind of mirrored experience of caring for so many
Nourishing.
more than ourselves. So much more than just ourselves.
The miracle of nourishment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so there's this profound sort of message that comes out of these 2 stories that I think is something we can take immediately away, and that is that the path toward this wholeness, this shalom, Jesus simply says is compassion, is caring.
Wow, yeah.
And the cool thing about caring, because
That's how we participate.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got this idea from, the word caring has these root words that have to do with emotionally engaged. I mean, like weep with those who weep,
Yeah.
joy with
Yeah.
those who are happy, sit with those who are ill. It's that kind of engaged
Right.
emotional investment. And so the word actually means to care for, actually means to take interest in or to invest in.
So God is interested in what gives life to the common good,
Yeah.
to all
And
creation. It's the healing nature of shalom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It completely redefined for me this idea of caring and compassion and shalom. It redefined for me that verse, which, man, as a fundamentalist, I lived by this verse, Romans 8:28, and you know what that is. All things work together for good to those who love God. And I always understood that as obey the rules, stay the course, and
good things will happen.
and
to
good
you.
things will happen. And when you
To
run into a
you.
problem, to me,
Yeah.
right, God will take care. It was all about me and my relationship with God. But now I see it as something else, this idea of all things, harmony.
Right.
Harmony works for good,
Yeah.
for common good. Harmony works for common good when we are paying attention to the very ground of our being.
It brings up the Micah text of what does the Lord, when we get down to the essence,
Oh,
what
yeah.
does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with God?
Mm-hmm.
That's what love requires. And and the implication is sometimes if you don't do them, there's going to be dire consequences.
Right.
But
Right. Yeah.
those are requirements to pursue shalom.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's to me is this interesting idea too with the word require, because it gets right back to the Romans 8:28 and then the Micah text you mentioned. What does the Lord require? Well, we hear these sort of things in stuff that's separate, kind of away, apart from us, kind of we call it dualistic, but a more deeply centered spiritual way of understanding this
Okay.
would be the very ground of our being. What does life require?
What does
does
life
God
require?
is life? What does the ground of our being require?
Yeah,
But for
yeah.
us to do justice, that's that harmony, to
Yeah.
find that equity, that balance, and to walk humbly, right? To walk with humility with the very ground of our.
It means kind of paying attention.
It means a lot of care.
Yeah,
It means
yeah.
being invested. Yeah.
You know, when we say require, I know it kind of evokes in some of us a sense of want to push back. I don't want to do requirements, rules. But if you think about it like this, I mean, what if we use the word and it's like, to be alive requires that we drink water. Life requires that we eat, that we breathe.
Yeah.
Breathing is a requirement. Well, we don't really have a choice if we want to be alive. And maybe that's the same thing with shalom.
Yeah.
We don't really, it's this or it all falls apart.
Well, and so let me push that even a little further.
Okay.
So like breathing requires that living requires that we breathe. But what if we don't think of of living as certain things are required, but more in relationship?
Okay.
So if you think of the word as require as having to do with how we are related, what makes things work? What brings about harmony?
Yeah.
So in relationship, what brings about harmony, what makes things work, is care. Is intentionally investing in, intentionally taking interest in. I mean, that is such an active participation. And we talked last week about the need to take 3 to 6 months to change how we relate to things.
Right.
That's such a thing, it's such a challenge to get away from. I mean, we talked about harder questions. Why is it so hard to get away from our egos, away from what makes us feel safe? But
this is what's required to be in relationship with each other.
what works best in our relationship is if
Well, it's not a bunch of rules. I mean, there are certain things that maybe that
right,
work
boy, was I
better or
glad to get
not.
rid of those rules that you had for me.
Yeah. That last, no.
Yeah.
We wouldn't do that.
No, but it's that taking interest in.
Well,
I've always felt like you took an interest in what I do,
paying attention
paying attention.
and investing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be that investment in the other. I want what's good for you. Good, not what's necessary. I want to encourage the best in you.
And that has to extend, I mean, harmony, shalom, is about the world. It's about the kingdom of God. And
Relationship.
Yes,
Kingdom.
relationship. Yeah, so that whole thing about paying attention made me think of that story, and you know this one too, you've told it too. The two guys that were walking down the street downtown, and it was the middle of the day, a lot of noise, which will be in a week or so, we'll be back to that. And,
Yeah.
and the two of them were walking, trying to have a conversation, a little bit hard to hear each other, but the one guy seemed a little distracted, so his friend says, "What are you listening to something else?" And he says, "Well, no, I hear you, but I'm also hearing this cricket." I'm just thinking, wow, how funny, a cricket in the midst of all this noise. And he looks at me, he says, "What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't hear
How'd
a cricket."
you hear cricket
How'd
and
you
all
hear
this?
Yeah, and so he says, no, and he points across the street, and there's this big planter, on the sidewalk with this tree and some bushes around it, and he said, "Yeah, right in there." He says, "Yeah, right. You can't hear anything." He said, "I'll prove it." So they cross the street, they walk over to the planter, and of course, as soon as they pull back the brush, you don't hear any sound, but there's the cricket. The cricket stopped, but there it is.
Yeah.
And he just says, "That was just a guess." He looks at him and says, "You just guessed that." And the guy's like, No. I've been working at this a long time, learning how to hear things, And he said, "I'll show you." And he reaches into his pocket, pulls out some coins, and kind of throws them to the ground, so you hear this loud chinking sound.
Yeah.
And immediately, everybody within 10, 15, 20 feet hears that sound, and they turn and they look to where they heard the sound of the money hit the ground.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And the guy looked at his friend and said, "It's really just a matter of what you discipline yourself to listen to pay attention to."
It all depends on what we pay attention to.
Right.
Are we listening?
For shalom.
Yeah, and
For
the invitation.
the
The
invitation.
invitation of shalom.
I mean, it's in every moment, I think,
Yeah.
that we find
Yeah.
that invitation.
And that also speaks of, it's an invitation, but we respond and we have to be different, don't we? Transformed. I still remember what James Forbes, who was the minister at Riverside Church in New York City, may not be an exact quote, but he said something to the effect in his Easter sermon. He said, "If you are not changed, if you are not being transformed, then Easter has not finished its work in you yet."
Yeah.
And I love that. We're in an Easter season. It's a season that invites, requires transformation, change, doing something different, doing life a better way.
Yeah, and part of that is this intentional decision to say, wait a minute, close the door. We're not done yet.
Yeah.
We're not done thinking this through yet.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that's true for a lot of us. I know it's true for me.
I'm in a hurry to get back, and yet I'm willing to take a little bit more time to think about this.
You know, I read this piece that spoke to what we're talking about. I read it in Yes Magazine just the other day.
Well, while you're looking that up,
Yeah, let me look this
because
up.
I'm looking at the clock and thinking, you know, we probably ought to wind up.
Well,
So
think about some takeaways then.
okay,
Yeah.
well, you know that, like you said, we have to invest and take an interest and invest ourselves in the invitation of shalom, and just how profoundly Jesus, when he appears, breathes shalom
Mm-hmm.
like a blessing. So the goal is shalom
Wholeness,
and wholeness, harmony, unity.
life working.
But the way we get there, the pathway, is through caring. So if the goal is wholeness and balance, taking interest, deeply investing in each other in this world, that is the pathway
Yeah.
to the shalom that God intends on earth.
So always on the other side of this path, if we're willing to go into it,
Mhm.
is resurrection.
That's exactly, but resurrection not as a one-time event a long
Right.
time ago, but a continual invitation to us.
Yeah, always this
Us.
invitation.
We don't admire Jesus' resurrection. We become a part of it. We take
Wow,
part
we
in
become
it.
a part of it.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I just read this. Actually, just read this morning
Yeah.
and pulled it up, and it just fits with what we were saying. It's written by I'm going to mispronounce her name, but Arundhati Roy, who is an Indian author, but well known in our country. Booker Man Award, won lots of national awards for her fiction and nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote this just the other day for Yes Magazine. I thought it was so poignant. Here, I'll just read part of it. What is this thing that has happened to us? It's a virus, yes. In and of itself, though, it holds no moral brief, but it is definitely more than a virus. Some believe it's God's way of bringing us to our senses. Others that it's a Chinese conspiracy to take over the world. Whatever it is, coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could do. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past, and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. Oh, I love that. Refusing to acknowledge that brokenness. But the rupture exists. And in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. And this one is no different. It's a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and our hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas and dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through, and I love this word, we can walk through lightly, humility. We can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world. And that's what I think the invitation is when Jesus says, Shalom, now feed my sheep.
And the whole world experiences resurrection, new life, and we participate in that.
So my thoughts as we close here, because I think next week we might just talk about resurrection.
Yeah.
I think we could have some fun talking about resurrection. Let's get down and dirty with it and really talk about resurrection. That was a weird intro to that one.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we take away from this, we take away that maybe it's not time yet. Maybe it's still too soon. Maybe we're not ready just yet. Let's close the door. Let's get a little deeper in our reflection and think about the ways we can do now. We can participate in taking interest not just in the people whom we're with, in
Right,
new
not
ways,
just our friends,
new
but
ways,
yeah.
right? Get out of those old patterns, take them,
Globally too.
and then look at it globally in our community and beyond. How can we take care of every moment we have? Boy, that would change everything. I really think it would. It could be a better way.
There is a better way.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll finish there. We're glad that you're with us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Hope that you're doing well. Coming up, Hannah Kirby is joining Brad Thompson and the band for a beautiful song. And I hope you have a great week. And let us know if there's anything that we can do to be of more help while we're still in this distanced relationship. Blessings on you, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.